This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. All right, we got some Browns news today that broke out of Berea. First things first, the Browns are considering yet another quarterback change. This would be the Browns' third starting quarterback of the season, and it's probably going to happen this week. Anytime a coach declines to name a starter, I mean, you already know what's going to happen there, right? It's not good news for the dude who's starting. We'll probably find out Wednesday that DTR is the starter. The question is, if DTR does start over Jameis, is that a justifiable thing to happen, given that DTR really hasn't showed a ton in his first couple of years, at least in the regular season. Preseason, he always looks pretty good. Camp, he always looks pretty good. But in the regular season, there's been limited avenues of excitement for DTR. So is this justified? I think, yeah, Jameis has played himself into this situation. 8 interceptions in the last 3 games. And I want to keep in mind that it's not just that he's throwing interceptions. It's where he throws these interceptions and like his overall really risky decision-making, especially on first down and on high-pressure situations of games. And I think that's really what separates him from what Joe Flacco was doing last year, right? Where Joe Flacco was throwing interceptions. You were still able to win games because the thing about Joe was going to dig a hole that he could dig himself out of, right? Joe was going to make every clutch fourth quarter pass he needed to dig himself out of all them interceptions he threw in the first half. The thing with Jameis is that the interceptions kind of come at the end of the game, or the interceptions come in scoring territory. I did a breakdown about 9 of Jameis Winston's interceptions at the time. He's added 3 more to that, right? But all 9 of them, and I pointed out in that video, what is very concerning to me is that Jameis Winston is throwing a lot of these interceptions in the Browns end zone, which is a absolute no-no. Like, he doesn't, when the Browns are in scoring position, a lot. Last week, he did it a lot. That is the fatal flaw with Jameis. I think they could live with the interceptions if he wasn't throwing interceptions that were actively costing the team points because he's throwing red zone interceptions. Like, that's something to give Joe Flacco credit. Joe never got to that point. He was not throwing a lot of red zone interceptions. He threw some pick sixes, no doubt. Like, I think he threw, 3 or 4 of them, and then 2 more were, almost pick sixes where they got the ball at the 1-yard line. Like, Joe Flacco was not perfect and is not the answer either. But if you're wondering why is it that it was more tolerable with Joe Flacco than it is with Jameis Winston, just look at where these interceptions are happening. Look at the time of the game that these interceptions are happening. And most importantly, look at the down that these interceptions are happening. Like, he makes so many of these decisions on first down. Like, if it was 3rd and 12 and he throws an interception, you're not really tripping on that. But it's not just that he throws the interception. He's just throwing the interceptions at the least opportune times that you could possibly throw an interception. Not every interception is built equally. It's why it matters the context of every interception that happens. And if you look at Jameis's interceptions, the context is terrible on a lot of them. And again, I would like to point this out. Jameis hasn't had a tip ball interception, which to me suggests that we're not even getting Jameis is getting bad luck interceptions. These are just all earned interceptions from Jameis. I also think that letting it kind of air out with Jameis, right? Letting him throw himself out of contention for the starting job was important because you need to let it play out with Jameis. Because if you had benched Jameis before it was justifiable to bench him, you would have risked people in the locker room being furious. Obviously, fans would be furious. It would have felt like a decision that had nothing to do with winning. Because if Jameis was playing at a high enough level to win with, then, it's not justifiable. But now that Jameis is not playing at a high enough level to win with, I mean, he had one of the Browns' worst quarterback performances of the year, which is a concern, right? And, this is something that kind of goes to Ken Dorsey, because there's a lot of quarterbacks that are hitting those like single-digit QBRs this year. So maybe he might not be back either. Why DTR? Simply because he's next up. I think this is the Browns' opportunity to just see whatever it is and be sure about what it is that they have in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's likely not a starter. It might not even be a backup, but now you get to erase all doubt, right? Like I think a thing that comes up most of the time when I hear anybody talk about DTR is he's never gotten a fair shake. Now, it's debatable whether that's true or not, but that's the common take around DTR, and why some people don't want to be definitive about him is he's never gotten a fair shake. He's always had to start on a short week or come in relief of somebody on a short week where he got the time to play. Like, it's been a bit of a struggle for him to get a fair shake, and this is a fair shake. He's going to go up against a Cincinnati Bengals defense that, for all intended and purposes, is not good. This is the Bengals defense that just have not been good against the pass. Now, they're coming off of one of their better performances. Keep in mind, one of their better performances is giving up 27 points to the Tennessee Titans. Now, they gave up 27 points because Joe Burrow threw a couple interceptions there, but still gave up 2 touchdown passes, let Mason Rudolph go 21 of 26 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. If there is anything worth salvaging in DTR, if he's a backup level quarterback or anything along those lines, he should be able to have a decent game versus the Cincinnati Bengals. If he has a decent game versus the Bengals, you don't go crazy with it, right? You don't say that DTR is going to be a franchise quarterback or anything. That's not why they're putting him out there. But you now know, okay, there might be something there. It might be somebody who could fulfill an NFL role in an NFL quarterback room with DTR. If he goes out there against the Bengals and plays like garbage, then okay, cool. We don't really got to hold space for DTR in any quarterback conversation with this team going forward, and you're free to pursue whatever flyer quarterback you want to take in the 4th, 5th round to go ahead and replace DTR's roster spot, because it's not like you feel like there's anything there worth losing out on. Yeah, and if he plays well, maybe the upside is you could get maybe a 5th round pick, or he could be a potential backup. You just want to find out if DTR is a NFL quarterback, if he's going to be somebody who's going to stick around. Again, this week against the Bengals, if he's an NFL quarterback, he should be able to play well enough in this game. And he's had moments where, you know, he looks like he could play well enough, right? Pittsburgh, that first game he won in Cleveland versus Pittsburgh, like there were moments there where I'm like, hey, he looks like an NFL quarterback. I thought before he got injured in the Denver game, there were moments there where he looked like an NFL quarterback. I thought there were moments when he came in relief against Cincinnati the first time that there was moments there where he looked like he could be an NFL quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean that he's a starter or like anything like that, but maybe he's a guy who could be a backup, or a guy who can, you know, do some gadgety stuff and be your 3rd quarterback as well. Like maybe there's some value to him on this roster. This is what this is about figuring out. Now, will Bailey Zapp be active for this game? I expect he will. I don't know if that means the Browns are going to have 3 quarterbacks. I don't know if that means that Jameis Winston is going to be the emergency quarterback, but I expect that Bailey Zapp will be active for this game, and possibly even the backup, right? Like I think there's a chance they give him a chance to play if DTR does not play well in this one. They're really just shaking out this quarterback room and figuring out who needs to be brought back, who does not need to be brought back. And this is part of the process here for it. So that's what we'll see with the quarterback position. Hopefully DTR plays well so we have more options on our hands. But if he doesn't, it's really not a big deal. Nick Chubb. So Kevin Stefanski gave us the official news, I think, after the game, that Nick Chubb broke his foot. And it's good to know what the timeline is for it, because he said today that Nick Chubb's foot is the shorter recovery. So it's a shorter recovery time for Nick Chubb. Now, that could just mean it's going to be a much shorter recovery time than coming back from an ACL tear. So he shouldn't be out a whole calendar year. When I Google it, and keep in mind, this is from a Google search, it says a broken foot takes about 4 to 6 weeks to heal. If you broke your foot Let me know in the comment section how long it took your foot to heal. Because I think it's different for everybody. But if that's the case for Nick Chubb, and this is a 4 to 6 week heal for him, that's extremely good news, right? If he can heal this foot by the start of February, that means that he's not going to miss a single thing. Honestly, if he can get this foot healed before the start of like March, right, which would be 3 months, so you're talking about 10 to 12 weeks, then that also is going to be like this injury is not going to be one that completely derails his offseason. And I think that's good news because Nick Chubb needs to have a relatively healthy offseason. And if he can get done with this foot injury in 4 to 6 weeks, be ready for all the offseason stuff, be able to do all the offseason stuff that he relies on, right, when he goes back to Georgia to his high school. I think it's like in Cedar Grove or something like that, and does his incredible lifts. As he's able to do all of that, feel like Nick Chubb again, I think that's going to bring him closer and closer to being Nick Chubb. So good news there on the broken foot front, right? It's not as bad as like breaking your leg or breaking your arm. Like apparently that bone heals pretty fast, right? We're talking about a month and a half. And in what I'm reading here, at worst, it can take up to 10 to 12 weeks. So good stuff there, right? If you're worried about Nick Chubb's offseason being derailed like me, when you heard broken anything, that terrifies you. But given the timeline for this injury, I think Nick Chubb's in a good place to be able to heal up, right? Because you got 3 weeks before the season actually ends. And then you have the start of next year. So he will have a position, will be able to get in position to hopefully get back to being Nick Chubb sooner than later and get that whole offseason in. So good to know that broken foot's not going to be like a offseason debilitating injury where he has to spend a whole offseason coming back from it. It seems like it's going to be a chunk of his offseason coming back on it, especially if they're saying that they're not even sure if he needs surgery, which would indicate that it's probably not one of the worst versions of it. Again, I've never broke my foot. You broke your foot. Let me know what you think about Nick Chubb's broken foot down in the comment section below. But this isn't a career ender for Nick Chubb, right? Now, if you're the Browns still, get some running backs in the draft because this draft has a ton of running backs. That doesn't mean you have to completely give up on Nick Chubb. The Browns will probably stand behind Nick Chubb and give him an opportunity to come back with him next year because they're super loyal to Nick Chubb. So they're going to give him a chance to come back and be Nick Chubb again. And, I think if he gets the bulk of that offseason back to lift those weights and feel like Nick Chubb again, I think he will be Nick Chubb. And then we can add another great young back in a tandem with him. And Nick Chubb's always worked best when he can be a part of a running back tandem. Hell, you can add 2 great running backs, right? Nick Chubb's done that before at Georgia. So pretty good news there on the Nick Chubb front. Good to know that foot injury not as crazy as because when I heard broken foot, I was like, damn, man, it's like a 3-month, 4-month injury, right? Like at least a 6-month recovery window or something like that. Like that's where my mind went to, was like kind of in that time frame of, oh, he's going to spend the whole offseason recovering off this. Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.